to Kaiju Month here on Reaction and Review. Yes, guys, I am dedicating this entire month to movies involving giant monsters. And hopefully across this month I'm going to see said giant monsters doing what giant monsters in these sorts of films do best. And that is wrecking cities and beating the shit out of other giant monsters. Man, I am so psyched for this. And I'm kicking off this month with a Japanese movie from 1996. That movie is Rebirth of Mothra. And as much as I'd love to give you details on this one, the only details I know are it's Japanese and it stars Mothra. And I'm kind of excited for that because I've seen Mothra guest star in a ton of Godzilla movies in my lifetime, but I've never had an opportunity to see any of the rare instances of Mothra getting a solo film. Now I finally get my chance to at least see one of them, and I'm certainly hoping for the movie to be decent. The only way I'm going to find out, though, is if I shut up and I push play, and I'm going to do that right now. So, without further ado, it's time to kick back, relax, and check out Rebirth of Mothra. You know, guys, when I went into this, I was thinking, it's a kaiju film from Toho. It was made in the late 90s. The puppet work and the special effects have got to be decent. No, the special effects in this movie so far have been abysmally bad. Our puppet work on Mothra and the smaller fairy variant of Mothra that the twins are flying in, as well as our villainess and the little, like, dough-rat-looking thing that she was flying around, all of it looks like shit. Add to it horrendous fucking compositing and blue screen effects. And we're taking a movie which is, by default, a little bit dull so far, and just making it a chore. I honest to God thought, guys, that at least the puppet work and the special effects would have been decent here. And this is pretty fucking bad by the standards of Toho circa 1996. I'm just gonna say that. Well, guys, we finally got to see the, I guess, main villain of the film, Ghidorah. Well, at least a little bit. Oh, I only got to see a couple of the heads, but at least that looked fucking awesome. I'm certainly hoping that it still looks badass once we finally get to see the whole fucking thing in action, when it finally starts to fight against Mothra. I am hoping for that much to be good. And as much, guys, as I've railed on how bad a lot of the special effects are, I will say that the writing is at least halfway decent, so at least that's kind of a positive. So Ghidorah just straight up breathes fire. You know, I'm used to a lot of kaiju who fire like lightning and shit, and how the regular Ghidorah's got like fucking like gravity beams. But to just see literally just a jet of flame go shooting out of a puppet's mouth, I'm sorry, guys, it just looks incredibly cheap. Which is kind of sad, because everything else about that character looks fucking awesome. But to watch it just straight up breathe fucking fire, it just comes off as kind of cheap. Wow, guys. Mothra's death scene is almost touching. I didn't really think I'd feel like a level of sorrow watching this, but this scene is making me feel just a little bit sad. Yeah, let's just keep showing the corpse as it slowly sinks to the bottom of the ocean movie. That's really going to help me feel just so awesome. Okay, I will say this. Our titular Rebirth of Mothra, that looked really cool. In fact, guys, I am going to say this, as much as I bitched about the special effects early on in the film, they actually have gotten steadily better as the movie, goes on. And our new Mothra bursting out of its cocoon as hundreds of thousands of CG butterflies will kind of merge and like transform into the full-grown Mothra. That just looked awesome, dude. Well, guys, that was Rebirth of Mothra. Let me shut that off. Okay. So, I guess I should start with a point that I wasn't totally certain on. what kind of movie was I really getting into? I had no idea, and the reason why is because most people who don't know much about kaiju films usually think that it's just giant monsters wrecking fucking cities. I even kind of sort of mentioned that at the very start of this video. However, there are multiple kinds of kaiju films out there, and certain ones are going to appeal to certain people. Like, you have the more dark horror-ish fucking kaiju flicks where it's just giant monster wrecking fucking cities, possibly fighting other giant monsters, but it's all kind of dark in tone, but it's still usually kind of sort of family, friendly. Then you sort of step down to a more family friendly thing where there isn't nearly as much violence, there is almost no blood. Well, there's normally not much blood in kaiju films anyway, but even more sterilized than fucking usual. And that is exactly where this film falls. This is a full-blown family film, which is good because, next step down is a kaiju kiddie film, and most kaiju movies that are made exclusively for children usually wind up sucking. That's the reason why the worst Godzilla movie ever made will probably always be Godzilla's Revenge, because it was a movie intended for 10-year-olds, but was written so poorly even 10-year-olds don't fucking like it. Speaking of writing, I guess I can segue into the writing for this movie. So, how is the writing in Rebirth of Mothra? It's a little bit of a mixed bag, and the reason why is because our story, what little information we are really given, I'll touch on that in just a sec, is really strong. I mean, it's a very fascinating film involving the last of our full-grown Mothras. I didn't know that Mothra was like part of a whole species that was just like thousands fold. At least in the universe of Rebirth of Mothra, at one point, thousands of years ago, there were hundreds, if not thousands, of Mothra. I don't know how to pluralize Mothra. Who were guarding the Earth. Now we're down to one who just laid an egg and is so old that it's kind of on the borderline of death. So, we basically are looking at the last of the Mothra line, essentially trying to save the Earth once more. And that's cool. I mean that right there is not really ultra creative. It is a little bit of a cliche thing, but oh well, it does certainly work. Unfortunately, we then get to the villain, which, mind you, the villain looks cool. I'll get to sound in a minute. Looks cool, acts cool, has definitely got some awesome fucking attacks. Again, one of those is a touch weak. I'll try to get on that too. It's just the way that it came out is the problem. The villain is a souped-up version of classic Godzilla villain King Ghidorah, except this is Des fucking Ghidorah, or I guess in certain subtitles or in certain dubs it's called Death Ghidorah. But here it's called, but for the sake of it, the dub here refers to it as Des Ghidorah, and it looks cool and all that fun shit. It's just, apparently it was basically imprisoned in this like rock that was, just buried in the earth for thousands of years. It was found when people were essentially cutting down the forest around it. I'll get to the whole fucking environmental message too in just a moment. And then they stumble onto this rock, and on the top of the rock is this little tiny pendant about yay big. The pendant was so loosely housed into the rock that somebody was able to take a fucking screwdriver and just pop it off like it was fucking nothing. That pendant being in that rock is what was keeping Des Ghidorah in there. Okay, I just have to say that as far as sealing evil fucking forces out, loosely putting a pendant on top of a rock and hoping and praying that the fucker stays there is probably not your best bet. But anyway, that's just me fucking picking on a minor nothing. Anyway, I just mentioned a second ago about this film's environmental message, which is something which Toho has put into a lot of films in the past, and they have done a handful of Godzilla films where there is either mention of, or the whole thing sort of focused on trying to save the Earth, and we shouldn't be fucking polluting, and this and that, and blah blah blah. And this movie handles it rather fucking well. I mean, it does have the message there, but it's not beating you over the fucking head with it. Well, correction, it starts off kind of sort of bludgeoning you with it, with the fact that, you know, we hear about all these people who are chopping down trees and all this other shit, and there's talk about wasting fucking paper, and it's your job though because you cut down trees, yada yada yada. You know, and you know, it starts off kind of sort of heavy-handed on the whole, you know, we shouldn't be chopping down as many trees, so on and so forth. But then it sort of lightens up, and then they kind of have like a little message at the very end when our new Mothra just kind of sort of like flaps its wings and brings every single tree and flower and blade of fucking grass back after fucking Daskidora just wiped it all out. That also is sort of an interesting use of this message, is the fact that our villain, Daskidora, is kind of sort of a physical manifestation of man's pillaging of the fucking landscape, because this monster, it draws its fucking energy by sapping it from trees and flowers and dirt and ground. You know, it basically is sucking up nature's essence and using it for raw power. And it basically is ravaging the land the same way that we do when we chop down forests and, you know, blah blah blah. And the movie even kind of sort of hints at that. Again, though, it's not nearly as blunt as it's been in other films, so I am going to grant them that. Our characters, well, guys, it's a fucking kaiju film, alright? 9 times out of 10, you're not going to give a shit about the fucking characters. You just want to focus on the monsters. I will say that our two child leads here, at least as they are written, are ridiculously annoying, and every scene that we spend without them are the best scenes in the entire fucking movie. Now, that could also be because of how they were dubbed. I will touch on the dub in just a minute, because I did watch the dub for this. But those two kids are incredibly irritating, and that's probably about the only character trait I can give them, is that they are irritating. And unfortunately, that is it for character traits, because no other human in this film has any kind of real noticeable personality quirk or any of that shit. So, yeah, we have two fucking irritating kids, and then we have a whole bunch of soulless, personality-free characters, which is fine. Again, that's kind of sort of par for the course for many kaiju films. I'm not going to fault it too much there. So yeah, guys, writing here, it kind of sort of works. I mean, it seriously isn't the worst written fucking kaiju film I've seen, but it is far from the best. It'll be simply average. Acting, well, I watched this thing dubbed, and the dub is all right. I mean, then again, though, we are talking about a film that was made by Toho and was being was being distributed in the U.S. by Sony, and Sony's the one who did the fucking dub, and this was a dub done in the late fucking 90s. Those normally were halfway decent. So, at least honestly, they didn't fucking phone it in or anything. There are honestly a few lines that they probably should have done another fucking pass on, because the fucking reading given is kind of shit. But oh well, that's maybe about five possibly 6 poorly done lines in a fucking hour and 40-minute movie. Again, I really can't fault them there. Our dub is fine. As for the acting, as for the actual body fucking language and all of that, it's fine. I can't tell you about the acting itself, because once more, I watched the dub. So, special effects. Ooh, here is where it's gonna hurt a little. Special effects. Again, we have a very mixed bag kind of thing here. Because when we're focused on Mothra, Daskidora, the Mothra fucking larva, our new Mothra, which I believe has officially been named Mothra fucking Leo for the sake of differentiating it from regular Mothra. All of that looks fine. Our problem is when we get to our little fairy sisters and the little tiny Mothra that they fly, as well as their sister Belvira and the little robot dragon thing that she pilots. Yeah, spoiler, you find out that it's a fucking robot at one point. I don't know why it had to be a robot, but apparently that needed to be a necessary thing. And it also kind of sort of looked like a darker, edgier 90s version of the fucking Dorats seen in Godzilla vs. King, Ghidorah. I believe I mentioned that during this video. Anyway, when we have our miniature characters who are flying in their little smaller monsters, that is where the shit goes tits up and it looks like shit. Part of that is because you have life-sized actors on these gigantic flying fucking rigs, and you've got them in front of a blue screen, a green screen, whatever, and you're trying to composite them into these shots, and they're fucking composited poorly. And when we have the when we have the aerial dog fucking fight in the house, a lot of that is rendered in CG, and it's very poorly done CG at that. Which is really fucking sad, man. I mean, it's like, because you would think two monsters who are flying at each other and they're shooting fucking lasers at each other and shit, you would think that would look cool. Unfortunately, it's rendered so poorly here, and they keep on jumping to CG so often, and it looks so piss poor, and the monsters are so poorly composited into these shots that entire scene is a fucking waste. In fact, because that is almost all that we get to see for the first half of the film. The first half of the movie has got hideous dog shit special effects. So, at least, thankfully, when we finally get to our full-sized fucking kaiju who are doing battle, at least then it looks decent, because it basically is the shit that Toho knows how to fucking do. So, special effects, when we have to work with riding fucking mounts and all that shit, it looks terrible. It's terribly fucking done. I kind of wish that they didn't use so much of it. But when it's Mothra, the Mothra larva, or Mothra fucking Leo fighting against Ghidorah, it looks fine. In fact, it looks really fucking solid then. So we do have that. Also included with special effects, I still have to mention about Ghidorah's attacks, because most fucking kaiju have got some kind, at least most Toho kaiju have got some kind of energy fucking attack, whether it be lightning or lasers, atomic fucking breath, whatever. And Ghidorah does have like a red lightning blast, but then beyond that, it just sprays fire, and it looks incredibly fucking cheap every time that they have to resort to it using just fire. I just kind of thought I'd mention that a second time. I know I mentioned it the first time that they showed it, but it was totally worth bringing up. Sound mix. I am going to say sound mix in this movie is fine, but there is one thing involving sound mix and sound fucking editing that I do have to mention. Because one thing which makes a whole lot of these kaiju films interesting, and what really sort of brings life to our fucking kaiju, it really doesn't matter if they're puppets or if they're guys in rubber fucking suits, the thing that brings them to life is their fucking roar. Every one of these monsters has a very noticeable and distinct roar. And they're all gotten in different ways. For instance, the most famous roar, of course, is that of Toho's flagship kaiju, Godzilla. And that fucking roar, a little bit of trivia for people, was done by taking a leather glove, covering it in fucking resin, and then slowly dragging that glove down the fucking neck of I think it was a double, bass. So that honestly is how you got the famous god fucking Zilla roar. And they've done this with other kaiju. Like, they have done various things in order to get these roars. And our fucking Mothras all have the same classic Mothra, roar. That's awesome. And then we get down to Desghidorah, whose roar, I'm not even joking you, is made up of elephant noises, which are sometimes a little bit distorted. There was no effort, and guys, it is so noticeable that every single time the fucker would essentially sound off, it would just sort of pull me out of it, because it really doesn't even sound like they did much to attempt to make it sound more beastly. It just sounds like a fucking elephant. Whoopee. Again, guys, that there's a minor fucking nothing, and that really isn't gonna bother a lot of people, but to me it came off as a little bit fucking lazy, and I kind of thought I would mention it. Everything else involving sound mix and sound editing, though, is totally fine, and that's great. Music. Our music here is decent. Again, it doesn't hold a candle to the epic scores heard in the various Godzilla films, but what is here is at least decent. And of course, we cannot talk about Mothra without talking about the songs that our fairy sisters sing, or what the fuck are they called in here again? The Elias, I believe. Because they have to sing the song of Mothra in order to summon forth Mothra, and it is one of the most iconic songs in all of Toho's kaiju films. Second only probably to the various fucking marches and themes featured in Godzilla movies. This song is incredibly iconic, and if you fuck it up, you will potentially ruin the entire film. Plus side here, the song is done incredibly well. In fact, all of the songs that our fairy sisters sing are done incredibly well. And once more, they are usually known for singing, so it is definitely good that we at least got some quality music there. And once more, as for our score, it's good. It's not great, but it is at least decent. Lighting here is fine when it's not showing off the wires that are holding up Mothra and Desghidorah. So again, that though is similar to every other kaiju film I've covered where I've had to mention that could probably be more blamed on the high definition transfer here. Probably wouldn't have been as noticeable on almost any other medium, but on fucking Blu-ray it stands out, and it stands out badly. Beyond though that, lighting here is fine. Our fucking camera work is decent. Ultimately, guys, when all is said and done, I'm able to recommend Rebirth of Mothra. Kind of, yes. If you can find it on Netflix, or if it's uploaded onto YouTube, or whatever, by all means watch it. If you can find it someplace to rent, go right ahead and rent it. To buy it? I don't know. You would probably have to give it a watch first, and if it's really your thing, then by all means buy it. I would probably be a little bit iffy about purchasing it. Now, mind you, right now you can buy it on Blu-ray, and it comes with the other two parts of the Rebirth of Mothra trilogy. And just as a heads up, I am going to be covering the other two movies this month. So you may be able to buy this and still feel decent about it as long as the sequels are good. But we'll find out about the sequels later on this month. As for this movie, it's good, but it's not fucking great. It's definitely worth watching once. I don't think I could recommend it beyond that. Now, Rebirth of Mothra came off the Amazon wish list. The person who sent it in was Dennis, and I would love to give Dennis the shout out that he sent me when he sent in the first two Rebirth of Mothra films. Unfortunately, I went to go see if his website was still active, and it is not. It is completely dead. So unfortunately, I cannot give Dennis a proper shout out, because I'd literally be sending you to a fucking empty, dead website with literally nothing the fuck on it. So anyway, Dennis, thank you. It actually is kind of a pity to see that your site is gone. I would have loved to have promoted it, but unfortunately that honestly is just sort of the way of things. But still, dude, thank you. I was really curious about this movie, and it's thanks to you that I got to watch it. You're fucking awesome, dude. Now, I kind of feel like watching some more fucking kaiju films, but I don't want to go with the next movie on the schedule. So I'm going to go dip into my Godzilla Blu-rays, and I'm going to go watch a few of those. I think maybe I'll start with Godzilla vs. Gigan. I'll kind of work my way from there. Anyway, guys, with that, we come to the close of another reaction and review. Until next time, ladies and gentlemen, take care, and I will see you all in the near future. Peace.